since we were talking about sunbathing, we've had quite a few people come onto the podcast and talk about the negative aspects of sunscreen, or go into it a bit, right? You can always find research on how sunscreen is beneficial, though. You always see the commercials of how they say it's dermatologist recommended. And I think it's tough for some people to have this idea that it might potentially not be helping them. So I'm curious, you work with a lot of people with this, especially for fairer skinned individuals, right? What should they be mindful about sunscreen? Is there any good to it for them? Do they need it in certain cases? And if they find that they go outside and they just like can't handle sun, what is the practices to be able to get yourself to be able to handle sun in a more healthy manner, potentially without sunscreen?
Yeah, this is one of those subjects that, I mean, the sunlight skin cancer subject is something that I've cut my teeth on. And so I think that there is a very rare case where I can recommend sunscreen. Very rare case.
What's the case?
Let's say you are at the equator. Let's say you're in Costa Rica. You forgot your long sleeve shirt. You're on the boat. Like, you really there's no way for you to get out of the situation. Sure, put some sunscreen on. Because ultimately it's the chronic use of the sunscreen that I think is more problematic, in the same way with anything in life, as opposed to acute situations. But my concern is actually less so the photocarcinogens in chemical-based sunscreens. I think all sunscreens have this ability to manipulate the full spectrum, which is very problematic if you study the synergistic relationship that all of these wavelengths within the solar spectrum have, right? And so most chemical sunscreens will block UVA, UVB. There are even options that block infrared, which is crazy to me because of the benefits that infrared provides. I mean, especially with the red light therapy and all that stuff. But what is it doing to the blue light? Blue light is a high energy wavelength that most sunscreen options do not touch. And so it's essentially letting this blue light through in an altered fashion onto the skin barrier in the same way that low emission glass does. Low emission glass is notorious for causing skin damage and accelerated photoaging. And there's that famous image of the man who's a truck driver for like 30, 40 years. One side of his face is completely damaged, the other is not. And I attribute that solely to the glass, not the sun. But modern dermatology blames the sun. And so that's kind of my framework on that. I think that
just because the windows of your car block a lot of the light that could be protective and good for you.
Yeah, low emission glass will block UVB mostly. That's a prime example right there. It will essentially concentrate UVA and blue light together, which are high energy wavelengths that are always supposed to be paired with red and infrared. But low emission glass dramatically reduces red and infrared. And so you quite literally have a situation where you're altering the spectrum to damage the skin in an accelerated fashion, especially chronically.
It's almost like putting a magnifying glass up to your face.
Exactly. Exactly. And you can see the clear difference, but modern dermatology essentially blames the sun for this.
I think RFK is like trying to go after some of these companies that make sunscreen, some of the bigger companies. He's trying to like get certain things removed because of some of what you mentioned about the potential carcinogens that are in the product. I think it's easy to get kind of distracted with that whole topic. It's also easy to get confused. And I don't think anyone's really saying like, hey, go out in the sun when it's blazing and just fuck it, get used to it.
That's what everyone thinks I'm recommending.
Yeah, you're going to get burnt and you can make yourself sick. You know, you can, my daughter, when she was like 3 or 4, we were out at the beach and she was playing and so forth and doing some stuff. And next thing you know, she just got sick, started throwing up a bunch, and it was just the heat, just like not a heat stroke because the water was there, but just a lot of sun for like a little kid. And you kind of forget stuff like that, but she was white as could be and had no exposure, no previous exposure to the sun. So,
and by the way, to your point, like what do I recommend as an option against sunscreen? Like, what are the alternatives? I think taking a proper circadian framework is essential. It's foundational. And so AM sunlight that is rich in red and infrared without UV to prime the skin, especially the circadian clocks within the skin.
That's gonna be less likely to cause any tanning and stuff like that, and less likely to do any damage, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so it'll prime your skin for that UV, which manifests a little bit later. And then outside of that, you have melanin, which I talk about a lot. We can get into the details. And then clothing and shade. I mean, if you take a look at animals in nature, what do? They seek sun and then they seek shade. Yep. It's a natural, balanced approach to sunlight exposure because, listen, it is powerful. Like, obviously, you can hurt yourself with sun in the form of heat stroke or burns, but we want to avoid that comprehensively.
What about some of the clothes, like the UVA protected clothes? Like, let's just throw out a scenario. taking the kids to Disneyland or something like that. And, you know, you just want them protected. Like they don't have a lot of exposure to the sun. It's finally the summertime. Everyone's outside. And I understand the shade. Is there certain types of clothes that you recommend, or what's your stance on some of that?
You know, I think it could have a use case somewhere like Disneyland. You do want to avoid burns, obviously, in the same way that you want to avoid injury from training. But again, if you look through the literature on burns, you'd find some very surprising things. Like, you know, total lifetime sunburn is associated with an inverse risk of melanoma death. That shouldn't happen according to the centralized, you know, orthodoxy. And so I think that, you know, burns are no big deal if they're acute, but you don't want to acquire a chronic.
Standing in line for 3 hours or something for a ride, you're going to get nuked, you know, if you're there at you know, 1 p.m. or whatever, right?
Yeah. And so, yeah, we want to avoid burns, but I think if you can get, you know, some sunlight exposure on your child or yourself during that time, it's going to be beneficial. But again, it's the education that is so key here.
Is the idea of sunbathing, like, it seems like it's all screwed up, because people, like, they'll kind of UV search, you know, like they'll wait for the UV to be really blasting for the day. They'll wait for it to be super high, and then they go out and then they lay out in the sun. But they haven't been laying out. They haven't been getting outside hardly at all, like the whole year. And now the sun's blazing, and they're going to lay out. They're going to wait until that you know, UV light is at its absolute highest, and that's when they're going to spend an hour or two laying out.
To me, it's the equivalent of trying to back squat 250 pounds when you're a novice. It just doesn't make sense. You're just going to hurt yourself.
Just walk in, you never squatted before, and you just got 2 plates on there, and you're just going to go for it.
Yeah, completely ignoring progressive overload, no understanding of hormesis. Like that's obviously a problem, which is why I think the education is key.
All right, Mark, you're getting leaner and leaner, but you always enjoy the food you're eating. So how you doing it?
I got a secret, man. It's called Good Life Protein.
Okay, tell me about that.
I've been doing some Good Life Protein. You know, we've been talking on the show for a really long time of certified Piedmontese beef, and you can get that under the umbrella of Good Life Proteins, which also has chicken breast, chicken thighs, sausage, shrimp, scallops, all kinds of different fish, salmon, tilapia. The website has nearly any kind of meat that you can think of. Lamb is another one that comes to mind. And so I've been utilizing and kind of using some different strategy, kind of depending on the way that I'm eating. So if I'm doing a keto diet, I'll eat more fat, and that's where I might get the sausage, and I might get their 80-20 grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef. I might get bacon. And there's other days where I kind of do a little bit more bodybuilder style, where the fat is, you know, might be like 40 grams or something like that. And then I'll have some of the leaner cuts of the certified Piedmontese beef.
This is one of the reasons why, like, neither of us find it hard to stay in shape, because we're always enjoying the food we're eating. And protein, you talk about protein leverage all the time. It's satiating and helps you feel full.
I look forward to every meal. And I can surf and turf, you know.
Yeah.
I could cook up some, you know, chicken thighs or something like that and have some shrimp with it, or I could have some steak. I would say, you know, the steak, it keeps going back and forth for me on my favorites, so it's hard for me to lock one down, but I really love the bavette steaks.
Yeah.
And then I also love the ribeyes as well.
You can't go wrong with the ribeyes. So, guys, if you guys want to get your hands on some really good meat, you can head to goodlifeproteins.com and use code POWER for 20% off any purchases made on the website, or you can use code POWERPROJECT to get an extra 5% off if you subscribe and save to any meats that are a recurring purchase.
This is the best meat in the world. Yeah, I think, you know, just it's not that it might sound complicated, or it might sound annoying, some of the stuff that we're saying, because I think people are kind of thinking about convenience a lot of times, and this isn't necessarily going to make your life a living hell. This isn't necessarily going to make things that hard. It's not that hard to have appropriate clothes when you're going to go on a boating trip. You know, when you're out on a boat, that there's, like, it's depending on the boat, a lot of times there's not options for shade. And so clothing is probably going to be your best option. And, you know, I stopped wearing like sunscreen and stuff like that years and years ago. And I just started to try to get myself more used to the sun. And this whole thing started maybe like around 10 or 12 years ago as well. And I was never dark. My skin was never like, you know, it wasn't never like the way that it is now. And just by hanging out outside and getting myself used to it. So there might be people listening who think, fuck, man, I'm just super pale and I'm going to melt. And there are people that really do have a hard time adjusting to the sun because their skin tone is very, very, very light, and it might take them longer. But most people can tan a little bit.
Exactly. And this is one of the most misunderstood subjects when you understand the mainstream framework. So you'll hear centralized dermatologists calling, they'll label a tan essentially skin damage, which couldn't be more, I mean, that couldn't be farther from the truth when you understand how the body is adapted to deal with that scenario. I mean, number one, melanin, which is just a tan, it's a sign of melanin production, offers a host of benefits. It's anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant, it is radioprotective, meaning it protects against radiation, Mother Nature's original sunscreen. It is antiviral, antimicrobial. The literature shows all of this. And so it's not just skin damage. I would argue that it's not skin damage at all, because they're ignoring the fact that there's a very intricate recovery system or repair system involved in the body. And so like a perfect example is how UVB would create thymine dimers, these like DNA mutations. But on the back end of that, you realize that UVB is also the thing that creates vitamin D3, which actually repairs those mutations. And all of this is under circadian control. And so I think that this is one of those talking points that creates iatrogenic harm in my mind. Iatrogenesis meaning that you end up creating some sort of negative health consequence for the patient directly given by a medical professional. And I don't think it's out of malice. I think they're actually trying to do good, but they don't have circadian biology in their curriculum, which is a huge problem considering the entire system is controlled by it fundamentally.
What about eating certain foods too? It seems like there's certain foods and even certain supplements that you can take that can potentially make the sun less harmful. Like, what is that? It's xanthan or
astaxanthin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Isn't there stuff? And they're like, I've heard some people talk about like chocolate and certain things, like because they're like basically made and born out of the sun. They're in areas where the sun's real rich, that they have protective properties built into them, and so that when you ingest these things and digest these things, it could potentially not allow you to get the sun the same way. Like, I don't know, just different things I hear that are maybe weird and off course.
I mean, it makes sense. They're antioxidants. You're providing that for the skin. Even the quality of the fats you consume. Ultimately, all the skin cells in your body are made of fat to some degree, and so I think that's huge, super important. That not many people consider. I think there is an argument to be made that if you consume oxidized seed oils, if you have a high omega-6 to 3 ratio, then you are going to be more susceptible to burns.